Good morning, friends. It is a kind of windy January day, but oddly it kind of warmed up a bit. Today we're talking about the Cordwood Challenge 2019, and main news is I'm handing over leadership of the Cordwood Challenge to Ben Scott this year. I'm going to tell you why, and then maybe discuss like the past and future of the Cordwood Challenge. Due to like chronic health problems that I've had for really about 20 years almost, especially the last year, I just feel like I'm increasingly less able to do physical work. The way it works is I'll have these brief windows of normality where I can actually function pretty normal, and I'll actually feel pretty normal, and this just happened the other day. I had a couple of good days in a row recently, and I was just like, how could I end up like I usually am again? It just seemed like it was all a bad dream and I could just do not anything I wanted to feel great. But anyway, sure enough, a couple days later, boom, I got slammed again. And so I spend about 80 to 90% of my time, honestly, if I say 80% of the time I'm non-functional, I don't feel like that's accurate. It's more like 90%. I think, if you averaged it all out, I probably only function at about 10%. Which is obviously a problem. Imagine your life being chopped off to like 10%, and you don't know when you're gonna have energy. When you do, you don't know how long it's gonna last. Like in 10, 15 minutes, it could just flip around and suddenly you feel sick and exhausted. That's my life in a nutshell. So that creates a bunch of problems. Obviously, I have a limited budget to work with, like an energy budget. I have to try to get what I need to done to just survive. Like a lot of that gets used up just say going to town every week or two to get supplies. I live alone still, so I have to cook. I have to, do the dishes. I haven't done my dishes for probably 3 weeks. Previous to that, I hadn't done them for about a month. Like, I'm just running out of dishes, and at some point I just have to do that instead of making a video or whatever else I do. I've also been prioritizing getting my living conditions under control a little bit and just improving them, so that all this time I have to spend this downtime, laying in bed or in a chair, zoning out or just trying to get through another bad day. I'm like at least a little bit more comfortable because I've never prioritized that. I've been on this homestead for 13 years, and that's never been a priority. It's always been planting trees, growing stuff, working on the land, forestry, and the last couple of years doing the Cordwood Challenge. I've done that for 3 years, but this past season I was only able to get one rick cut. Like, if I'd really reprioritized, again, I could have done more. Starting about last spring, I decided to prioritize kind of getting my life together, and I had about 6 or 8 weeks where I felt great, way better than normal, and I was able to work for, over a month straight. Didn't use that to the best advantage in retrospect, what I decided to do with it. Regardless, quite a bit of that was toward, again, getting things together here and cleaning up like years and years of accumulated messes on the homestead and stuff like that. So that's my situation, and I think that as far as my participation in that community of the Cordwood Challenge and Axe stuff, the best use of that limited energy when I can put some of it into Axe stuff is going to be putting more effort into content about use and safety, which is just still there's a lot of holes there that need to be filled. Also some theory, but all stuff that just hasn't been covered enough by other people or by me or whatever, and especially the stuff that would lend support to the Cordwood Challenge in terms of people's, again, effectiveness and especially safety. Even without having these problems, which makes it much worse, I have a lot of the traits that you would consider are considered associated with like Asperger's syndrome, OCD, ADHD, and all these dumb, little labels and letters that we put on people to try to fit them into some kind of classification. And one of those preferences is like being hyper focused on things, like certain things where you kind of just like everything else, it becomes completely unimportant, and you kind of focus on this one thing and breathe and live that for a while. And that can be anything from like a one-day project to something that spans an interest of years. That has its advantages because it allows people like me to kind of focus on something so intently that everything else becomes less of a distraction. And sometimes it allows you to kind of understand things better or take it to another level. The downside is that we usually don't make very good leaders or responsible people that can kind of like toe the line and do what needs to get done when it needs to get done. So in terms of like my personality in general, I just don't make a very good leader type of person. I'm more like a creative, project-oriented kind of person. So this year I thought, okay, either I'm not going to do this, like I'm not going to plan on taking on the challenge unless something changes and I start feeling way better, you know, fingers crossed, hopefully. You know, I just wanted to like take that stress off and like not think about it and not worry about it. I figured either the Cordwood challenge is going to run itself or I could find someone else to run it. So I thought about all the people I could ask, and I contacted Ben Scott. You know, he's a young guy that's enthusiastic. He's been putting out consistent axe-related content. A lot of it is like, it's definitely more insightful than the average content. A lot of that is because he did the Cordwood challenge and he cut a whole bunch of wood, like he cut a bunch of ricks, I think 4 ricks or something. You know, he chopped a lot, and I think a lot of his insights and understanding really came from doing the Cordwood challenge. He posts to the Cordwood challenge group way more than me, and probably more than anyone else. And yeah, he just seems really intelligent, wise beyond his years, and I'm impressed with the content he's putting out and the discussions he's starting. So I contacted him and was like, what, you know, I'm kind of looking for someone to run the Cordwood challenge this year. And he wrote back right away, and I talked to him that day, and he's all into it. Not only is it someone to run the challenge, but when I started this, I had certain kind of broad goals in mind, but they were real loosely defined. Mostly it was to change the face or try to affect internet culture, axe culture, in a direction towards more practical use and understanding of axes, and actually honoring the axe for what it was created for and the form that it took out of necessity and evolved to over time. So, you know, I wanted to see more examples of competent, you know, axe use on YouTube, which were sadly lacking at the time. More dirty axes, just, you know, tired of seeing the videos of people saying this is my favorite axe and trying to give us advice about axes when clearly the axe has hardly been used at all. There's just like a level of incompetence that was common or has been common in the use of axes on the internet, and I found that rather disturbing. And wanted to kind of really, it wasn't about the quantity of people doing the challenge so much as just like giving a shove in a certain direction and try to create like a snowball effect so that more and more examples of competent use would show up on the internet, and more like a deeper level of understanding would start to be propagated and presented by people. And you wouldn't have this situation where there's people, you know, giving us advice, trying to sell us axes, or tell us which axe we should buy or what we should do with it, when it's pretty clear that they don't actually have that much experience. And so I would like to see a world where we're challenged to make content that lives up to a higher standard, basically. Kind of resetting the bar a little bit, I guess. And a lot of that impetus had to do with me going and watching these videos as someone who was like kind of moderately competent with an axe at the time, and seeing these really, really bad examples of how to use an axe. I mean, dangerous, ineffective, inefficient. Having these people oftentimes present themselves as kind of, you know, someone you should listen to, and then reading the comments and seeing like 95% of them are like, that's great, this is awesome, thanks for showing us how it's done. And I'm like, no, that's not how it's done. I'll watch that. I wanted to do something about that, so that was part of my reasoning for doing this in the first place. But beyond that, like pretty early on, I started to think, well, this could really go a lot further. And I actually took out a domain name that Ben and I have already talked about maybe him doing something with in the future, to have a site that's just kind of centered around the practical use of axes in general, and not just this one little cutout simple idea of the Cordwood challenge, which is awesome. And I really like the Cordwood challenge as it is for learning to use an axe in the field and like under, you know, real conditions, and doing all the different types of work that you do with an axe. I think it's just the greatest thing ever. But there's so much more too, you know, and there could be other challenges or, you know, stuff like that. So I talked with Ben about that too, and we're kind of have a similar vision of like what the future could look like, and maybe he'll be the person to take it there, or maybe like a number of people can work together to do that. The other thing for me, I know I'm rambling and losing my train of thought here, but the other thing for me is that I have a lot of different interests, and I have a lot of different things in my head that I want to get out, that I want to make videos about, tanning videos, and just stuff I haven't even touched on, like hardly at all, like primitive technology stuff and philosophy and all kinds of things. So, and I really should try to do at least some of that content. So all these things are competing with me doing axe-related content, and on top of that, taking, you know, 10% of a normal person's energy and using like a whole bunch of that to chop wood. As much as I love it, and as much as I've learned, and as much as I want to keep doing it, literally like every year as long as I can, I have to look at this year and say, that's crazy, that's insane. Like, it was insane for me to do it in the first place, but I'm glad I did, and enough things lined up that I feel I don't have no regrets, but I'm not big on regrets anyway. So where we're at now is Ben's kind of just taken charge of the thing. He just put up a video for Cordwood Challenge 2019. He's added some sub-challenges or more minor challenges, so that people who don't have access to a forest and can't just go cut a bunch of trees down, they can be just like a little bit more accessible to more people. And that also potentially allows people to kind of ease into it, because I always try to say that anyone with no experience really shouldn't do the Cordwood Challenge the first year. I mean, maybe tentatively, but don't kind of, like, it's sort of dangerous, and it doesn't really make any sense to approach it from like, I've never used an axe to I'm going to go cut, you know, even one rick of wood. And so, you know, there could be ways for people to participate in that community and, you know, demonstrate that they're doing work and be kind of just one of the guys and be more involved while kind of getting geared up to do the Cordwood Challenge, say like the following year or something like that. A way for people to participate where they can kind of like ease into it and see if it's even something that they want to do. It's easy for people to look at, you know, one of my videos, me out having lots of fun chopping wood in the forest, and it all looks like it's going smoothly, and then get out there with an axe, that if you've never swung an axe, and, you know, see the reality of what it's like to swing an axe. So yeah, if you're an axe guy and you haven't checked out Ben Scott's channel, search YouTube for Ben Scott Axe or Ben Scott Cordwood Challenge, and go sub to Ben. He's a super cool guy, and I'm really glad to be working with him. I probably won't be working with him all that much, just kind of consulting and batting around ideas. You know, having this illness is just endlessly frustrating, and I'm constantly faced with failure, like over and over and over again, and this has been going on for decades, a couple decades now, and it's just worn me down. And I have, you know, I bounce back really fast when I feel good, but I'm getting more and more cynical, and I don't think this is unjustified at all, about my ability to get things done and my ability to eventually get over this. And I'm starting to view the whole thing, I think, a little more realistically. I'm just so frustrated all the time by getting interested in a topic. Like, I've made multiple videos that didn't get finished, or I get geared up and I have tons of outlines written and just huge lists of videos just on axes, let alone everything else. And I'll often start them and get my head in the game, often for like a couple of days, and then I just can't get it finished and something else gets in the way, and then pretty soon I've just lost it and I have to kind of start over. And it's just super frustrating. So it's hard for me to be engaged in this subject in general, because it's just this constant buzzkill all the time. I'm like a passionate, involved person that likes to hyper focus on things, and I get all excited about this stuff, and then I can't do anything about it, and it's just super frustrating. So a lot of the time I live this weird compartmentalized life where I'm just like, you know, in this state where almost my identity is in question, because I so much am what I know and what I do. And I'm just like waiting out yet another just awful day, just trying to like get through the day to the next awful day and just wait for that little window I get. And it's just harder and harder for me to bounce back and grab a hold of those things and make the best use of them. So for that reason too, it's just hard for me to be really involved in that subject and that community, especially because it involves so much physical effort and mental focus to do that. My role, again, at this point, I feel, and this goes for my entire channel and everything, is to provide like support, to take what I know already and maybe do a little bit of innovation to get out axe content that's around use, safety, the efficient use of axes, theory, and stuff like that. That's what I should be doing, and that's the best use of my time. I can help by far the most people that way because I put out a video and it's seen by, potentially thousands, tens of thousands, even eventually hopefully hundreds of thousands of people. When I have to look at the reality of my life, as hard as it is to just try to be realistic about it, in weigh like, okay, chopping like a bunch more wood with an axe and taking this huge, it's always been costly for me to take these little windows of energy and spend it on that. Again, I'm glad I did, but to take that and weigh it against this and, helping other people achieve their goals now, yeah, this is the clear winner. So I probably won't chop very much wood this year except for doing experimental stuff or maybe warming up to do a video or doing a video or something like that. This project, to me, it's been a great success. Like, if I stopped everything now, even if Ben didn't take on the challenge and keep it going and no one else did, if everyone stops doing the challenge, I feel like the virus is planted. Like, my main goal was to just kind of like get an idea out there and kind of change things a little bit and get them going in a certain direction. And I just feel like, yeah, the infection is planted, and I think things are going to kind of grow themselves in a better direction, at least what I would consider a better direction. And I'm really stoked about that, and I just hope that it will continue to evolve and there could be, maybe a community of people that's really centered very much around the functional uses of axes and the honoring of this amazing, quintessential tool, one of the most primitive and basic tools. A lot of people think this project is stupid and using axes is stupid. It's like anything, you either get it or you don't. If you get it, you get it, and you want to put this, put your ankles and feet at risk of getting cut and trees falling on you and stuff in order to have this skill that most people would consider archaic and you can certainly get by through the rest of your life without, most likely. That's just that, and I get it. So, Brotherhood of the Axe. For now, just expect to see a lot less from me participating in the Cordwood Challenge community. I mean, I'll try to stop in and leave comments, but honestly, it's hard for me to stay focused on that and remember to do it. I think this is a better direction for the Cordwood Challenge to have Ben on board. I think that he'll do, honestly, a much better job than me at facilitating and being a leader. And I think that my place, if any, is definitely to produce some content that really needs to happen in order to fill some gaps that are there. And I think Ben will be filling a lot of those gaps as well, and hopefully increasingly more people doing those types of videos on axe use, safety, theory, function, tuning up axes, and all that stuff. All right, chop on, choppers.